I've got to share a secret with you, folks. One of the great joys of substituting for Charlie Rose is every now and then you meet the real thing. And I have to tell you, we have a legend with us tonight, Chet Atkins, who is one of the great figures in music in this country. He's now in his 50th year in the recording industry. He's won 13 Grammys. He's recorded more than 80 albums. He's sold more than 30 million records. He's the youngest person ever inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. As a record producer, he helped launch the careers of such greats as Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. And I'm just going to read something to you here because he participated in such landmark recordings as a guitarist as Hank Williams' Your Cheatin' Heart, Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel, and the Everly Brothers' Bye Bye Love. Now, that's not a bad record, I've got to tell you. His Nashville sound is credited with keeping country music alive after the birth of rock and roll, and we are really pleased and indeed thrilled to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mort.
I am not exactly a celebrated music critic, but I have just had the pleasure today of listening to your new album, Almost Alone, and I have to tell you, it is wonderful music.
Well, bless you, thank you.
How did that particular album sort of form in your own mind and get to be played?
Well, I've always been kind of a soloist, and my old fans keep saying, why don't you make records like you used to make, meaning play by myself. And so I thought, why not? I'd made a lot of other stuff, and it was time to do this. So I just get in my little studio and turn on the recorder and play and back it up and say, I don't like that, and record it. It took me about a year to make that album because I kept trying to get it right, you know, to play. And I finally decided I'll never please myself. So they say, well, you got to turn it in. It's ready, and it's got to be ready tomorrow. So you finally, but I never want to let an album go. I always think I can do it better. Deadlines
help, huh?
Yeah, they do.
Now, let me ask you a question. I was reading somewhere where you would have very attractive women in an audience in order to inspire some of your acts to sort of do their best. I mean, was that any help to you when you were recording this?
No, I didn't have that advantage. But when I was a producer, I don't produce anymore, but once in a while, like when Eddy Arnold recorded, I'd invite in some pretty girls, and he would sing a lot better. Everything was live then, you know, the whole band was there, and he'd dance around and sing better than usual, and so that was a good idea.
Now, when you kind of took up the guitar, I mean, how old were you at that point?
You know, I've played ever since I can remember. It was ukulele at first.
Yeah.
And when the strings broke, I would just rip a wire off the screen door and put it on the ukulele and tune it up, and it'd stay in tune for a little while, and I'd plunk on that. And then when my fingers got a little larger, I played guitar, but I would tune it in a major key and play with a kitchen knife. They call that slide guitar now. And then later on, when I got to be a teenager, I could play the terrible guitars that we had and started improving a little bit. But I've been an amateur all my life. I've always been trying to learn new things, and I got a job when I was really an amateur. But thank goodness the guy kept me, and I learned to play.
Well, you give good meaning to the word amateur. Let me ask you a question. Didn't you develop this sort of 3 fingers and a thumb as sort of the technique for the guitar?
I did, but it was all out of ignorance and not knowing what was happening. And
right.
That's
not
the guy.
Knowing what you couldn't do, huh?
That's the guy. The people that come up with something different is someone, you know, that doesn't really know any better. And I was way back in the sticks, and I just played the type music with my thumb and fingers that I liked. And when I got out in the world, I was different from everyone else, and I could get a job. I got fired a lot, but because I sounded like 2 bad guitar players, but I could get a job and play my music. And I was learning, too. I was into all kinds of different music, and I didn't draw a lot of mail, and so that determined your worth in those days.
Well, they now say that you saved country music for a while, but now, I mean, it's just been there's been an explosion of interest in and audiences listening to country music. What happened? How did that change all take place?
Well, the music became more sophisticated. The writing is the best it's ever been. I think the greatest writers in the world are in Nashville, for instance. The musicians are terrific, and it's possible now also to make perfect records. You can punch in and correct all the mistakes. And also now with the young people in it, with the hats and everything, it's become a visual business. So the young kids go buy the records, the boys and girls that they want to see, and so it's become a young business now, and it's kind of sad, but we're selling more records than ever, the country artists are, so we've got to remember that it's a business, and And so it's a good business right now.
There's also been a huge number of radio stations that basically focus on country and western music. I mean, just a multiple of 4 or 5 times what it used to be. So that audience must be out there.
Yeah, it's just tremendous, the business is now. And I think it'll continue. It all depends on the writing. You know, with a good song, there's a lot of trash out there, but there are enough great songs to get us through the night. And as long as that continues, I think country music will change. It's got to change always to please the buyer, but I think it'll always be around. And every once in a while, a Randy Travis comes along, or some of these country artists that put us back where we need to be, like Alison Krauss, that do real country music. So it seems like we always go back to that eventually, and so we don't, because of that, we don't lose our roots.
Who else would you say are sort of the best of the younger country and western musicians and writers coming up?
One of the best ones I know is Vince Gill. He's just a hell of a guitar player, and he sings right on pitch like a bird. And there are a lot of guys, but I think of him right off. I just played golf with him last week.
You must have done well.
I got some sunshine.
Why Nashville? Why did everybody sort of concentrate in on, focus around, live around, and share that as sort of the creative center for country music?
It started because of a radio show called the Grand Ole Opry. At first, the recording companies would get artists to come to New York or Chicago or L.A. to record. And then they started, bring some musicians to Atlanta. We'll record in the Fox Theater studio. And when I moved to Nashville, Mr. Scholes, who was with RCA Victor at that time, he called me and said, I'm coming down to record, get some singers, get some musicians. So we'd rent a studio, usually a jingle studio, and record. And he had a dream of building a studio in Nashville and having me run it, and that finally happened about 1954. But it all happened because of the Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opry was and still is, the biggest country music radio show in existence. And there used to be barn dances everywhere. You know, the National Barn Dance in Chicago, and they were everywhere. And I think what saved the Grand Ole Opry was they never tried to go uptown. They never tried to please Madison Avenue or the West Coast. They just kept it down to earth, and so they still survived.
Let me ask you, when in the West Coast, in the Hollywood, in the film community, the entertainment business, you go out there and basically all they talk about is the business, the entertainment business. When you all get together socially, is there that kind of community of musicians, and do they basically just talk about the music, or what?
There is a community like that, but they talk about all the new records that are out, pop, jazz, everything, because they're into all that. A lot of them are great jazz musicians, and they're not into the Hollywood scene too much, but we have an awful lot of people who have migrated to Nashville, and they can't continue every day because they don't want to raise their kids, I suppose, on the West Coast. And Nashville, you can, in 15 minutes, you can be out in a park of thousands of acres. You can be out in the country. It's still a small town. Now,
I'm going to, if I may, just sort of introduce something here that I think is really going to be a treat for our audience. It is one of the songs from this absolutely wonderful album, and it's called Waiting for Susie B. Folks, you're in for a great treat. I give you Chet Atkins. Well, ladies and gentlemen, just think of how you would feel if you could wake up in the morning and pick a guitar like that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm just going to once again encourage you all to try this album. It is just wonderful music. It's called Almost Alone because he plays it almost alone, and it is just a wonderful album. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Charlie, for allowing me to be here with this man. You don't have to pay me very much to do this. All the best.
Thank you, Mort.
Good night. Thank you all for joining us.